Welcome back to Project Takif. Today, we are starting our next chapter, Expansion and Consolidation of British Power in India. Before starting, let us first look at the history of the British Empire. It can be divided into two phases. The first empire stretched across the Atlantic. It focused on America and the West Indies. The Second Empire began around 1783, after the Peace of Paris. This phase swung towards the east. It focused on Asia and Africa. The British viewed themselves as the new Romans. They felt charged with civilizing the so-called backward races. Post-Enlightenment intellectuals certified themselves as civilized. This justified their rule over the Orient. Accidental or intentional? Was the British conquest accidental or intentional? This is a major historical debate. Historian John Seeley leads one group. He says the conquest was made blindly. He famously called it a fit of absent-mindedness. They argue the British only came to trade. They had no desire to acquire territories. They were unwillingly drawn into Indian political turmoil. The other group disagrees completely. They say the British had a clear intention. They planned to establish a large and powerful empire. They worked on it bit by bit. The truth likely lies in the middle. Initially, the company acquired territory to protect trade interests. They saw how fractionalized Indian politicals was. They realized they could pit one ruler against another. Later, however, it became a clear plan. B.L. Grover writes that Lord Wellesley used the subsidiary alliance aggressively. From 1798 to 1818, British motives were consciously imperialistic. Lord Hastings treated India as a conquered country. Eventually, they worked on a set designed to conquer the whole of India. Causes of British success. Why did the British succeed? It took them almost a century. Here are the key causes. First, superior arms. The English used muskets and cannons. These were faster and had a better range than Indian arms. Indian rulers tried to import European arms, but they could never match the English officers in training. Second, military discipline. The British had a regular system of salary payment. This ensured their troops were loyal. Indian rulers often did not have enough money. The Marathas sometimes had to raid just to pay their troops. Indian armies often consisted of mercenaries. These troops were not disciplined and could turn rebellious. Third, civil discipline and fair selection. Company officers were chosen based on merit and skill, not on caste or hereditary ties. Indian administrators were often appointed based on personal relations. This meant their competence was doubtful. Fourth, brilliant leadership. The British had leaders like Clive, Warren Hastings, and Munro. Crucially, they had a strong second line of leaders, men like Sir Ayercourt and Lord Lake. The Indian side had brilliant leaders too, like Hyder Ali, Tipu Sultan, and Madhurao Sindhya. But they lacked a team of trained second-line personnel. Also, Indian leaders fought against each other. They often supported the British against their neighbors. Fifth, strong financial backup. The company earned enormous profits from trade. They could pay handsome dividends. This vast wealth financed their wars. Finally, nationalistic pride. The British people were proud of their national glory. Indians, however, lacked a unified political nationalism. British conquest of Bengal. Now we move to the conquest of Bengal. Bengal was the richest province of the Mughal Empire. It included present-day Bangladesh, Bihar, and Odisha. Exports included saltpeter, rice, indigo, sugar, and silk. 60% of British imports from Asia came from Bengal. The English established factories in Balasore, Hooghly, and Patna. By the 1690s, they founded Calcutta. The company paid just 3,000 rupees a year to the Mughal Empire. In return, they traded freely, but their exports were worth more than 50,000 pounds a year. In 1756, Ali Vardi Khan died. He was succeeded by his grandson, Siraj-ud-Dowla. Siraj was young and impulsive. He inherited many troubles. He had a rival cousin, Shaukat Jung, a hostile aunt, Ghasiti Begum, and a rebellious commander, Mir Jafar. Siraj tried to act strong. He defeated Shaukat Jung. He dismissed Mir Jafar and appointed Mir Madan. He appointed a Kashmiri officer, Mohanlal, as administrator. The Battle of Plassey, 1757. The conflict with the British escalated. The company misused trade privileges. They fortified Calcutta without permission. They gave asylum to a political fugitive, Krishna Das. Siraj attacked and seized the English fort at Calcutta. This event is often linked to the Black Hole tragedy. It is said that 146 English prisoners were held in a tiny room. 123 supposedly died of suffocation. However, the number is likely exaggerated. Robert Clive arrived from Madras with a strong force. He forged a secret alliance with the traitors. These included Mir Jafar, Rai Durlabh, and Jagat Seth. The deal was that Mir Jafar would be made Nawab. The Battle of Plassey took place on June 23, 1757. It was decided before it even began. Siraj's 50,000-strong force was defeated by a handful of Clive's men. Siraj was captured and murdered. Mir Jafar became the Nawab. The British laid the foundation of their empire. They received the zamindari of 24 Parganas, Mir Qasim and the Treaty of 1760. Mir Jafar soon irritated the English. He even conspired with the Dutch. But the Dutch were defeated at Bidara in 1759. Eventually, Mir Jafar resigned in favor of his son-in-law Mir Qasim. A treaty was signed in 1760. Mir Qasim agreed to cede 3 districts to the company: Burdwan, Midnapur and Chittagong. He also agreed to pay 5 lakh rupees for the company's wars in the south. Mir Qasim was the ablest Nawab. He shifted the capital from Murshidabad to Munger. This was to maintain a safe distance from Calcutta. He reorganized the bureaucracy and the army. However, trouble brewed over the dastak. This was a trade permit that exempted goods from taxes. Company servants misused it for private trade. They also sold dastaks to Indian merchants. This denied the Nawab his tax revenue. Mir Qasim decided to abolish all duties effectively. The British protested, demanding preferential treatment. War broke out in 1763. The Battle of Buxar, 1764. Mir Qasim was defeated in early battles. He fled to Awadh. He formed a confederacy. This included the Nawab of Awadh, Shuja'ut-Dawla, and the Mughal Emperor, Shah Alam II. The combined armies met the British at Buxar. The battle took place on October 22, 1764. The English were led by Major Hector Munro. The English won a decisive victory. This battle was more important than Plassey, because here the Mughal Emperor himself was defeated. It made the English a great power in northern India. The Treaty of Allahabad, 1765. Robert Clive concluded the Treaty of Allahabad in August 1765. There were 2 separate treaties. First with the Nawab of Awadh. He had to surrender Allahabad and Kara to the emperor. He had to pay 50 lakh rupees as war indemnity. He had to give the estate of Banaras to Balwant Singh. Clive did not annex Awadh. He wanted it as a buffer state against Afghan and Maratha invasions. Second, with Shah Alam II, the emperor would reside at Allahabad under company protection. He issued a farman granting the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha to the company. In return, the company would pay him 26 lakh rupees annually. The company also received 53 lakh rupees for Nizamat functions. This included military, defense and police. The emperor became a rubber stamp for the company. Dual government. Finally, Clive introduced the dual system of government. This lasted from 1765 to 1772. It was the rule of the two. The company held the Diwani rights, meaning they collected revenue. The Nawab held the Nizamat rights, meaning he handled the police and justice. However, the company also controlled the Nizamat indirectly. They nominated the deputy Subadar. They appointed Muhammad Reza Khan for Bengal and Raja Sitab Roy for Bihar. This system was disastrous. The Nawab had responsibility but no power. The company had power but no responsibility. It led to administrative breakdown. Warren Hastings finally ended this system in 1772. The Vodiyar dynasty of Mysore. Let us resume our journey with Mysore. After the Battle of Talikota in 1565, the Vijayanagara Empire fell. From its remnants, many small kingdoms emerged. In 1612, a Hindu kingdom under the Wodeyars emerged in Mysore. Chikka Krishna Raja Wodeyar II ruled from 1734 to 1766. However, real power lay elsewhere. Two brothers Nanjaraj and Devaraj reduced the king to a puppet. Mysore was becoming a formidable power. This threatened the English. They feared Mysore's proximity to the French. They also feared for their control over the rich Malabar trade. The rise of Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali was born in 1721 in an obscure family. He started as a horseman in the Mysore army. Though uneducated, he possessed a keen intellect. He was a man of great energy. Mysore faced repeated attacks from the Marathas and the Nizam. It became financially weak. Hyder Ali seized the opportunity. He became the de facto ruler in 1761. He realized the Marathas were fast. He realized the Nizam's army had effective artillery. So he turned to the French. He set up an arms factory at Dindigul. He introduced Western training methods. He captured Dodballapur, Sera, Bidnor and Hoskote. He even subdued the troublesome Puligars. However, the Marathas under Madhav Rao defeated him 3 times, in 1764, 1766 and 1771. Hyder had to pay large sums to buy peace. But after Madhav Rao's death in 1772, Hyder bounced back. He recovered all lost territories.
First Anglo-Mysore War, 1767 to 69. The English were confident after their success in Bengal. They signed a treaty with the Nizam in 1766. They wanted the northern Sarkars. In return, they promised to protect the Nizam from Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali faced a grand alliance, the Nizam, the Marathas and the English. But Hyder was a master diplomat. He paid the Marathas to turn neutral. He promised the Nizam a share of conquered territories. The Nizam switched sides to join Hyder. The war lasted a year and a half. Suddenly, Hyder appeared before the gates of Madras. The English panicked. They signed the Treaty of Madras on April 4, 1769. It was a humiliating treaty for the British. It provided for the mutual restitution of conquests. Most importantly, the English promised to help Hyder if he was attacked by another power.
Second Anglo-Mysore War, 1784 to 84. The peace did not last. In 1771, the Marathas attacked Hyder. The English breached the Treaty of Madras and did not help him. Hyder felt betrayed. Meanwhile, the American War of Independence broke out. The French fought against the English. Hyder received French war materials through Mahe on the Malabar coast. The English tried to capture Mahe. Hyder saw this as a direct challenge. He forged an alliance with the Marathas and the Nizam. He attacked the Carnatic and captured Arcot. He defeated the English army under Colonel Bailey in 1781. But the English had Sir Eyre Coote. He detached the Marathas and Nizam from Hyder's side. Hyder was defeated at Porto Novo in November 1781. However, he regrouped and defeated Commander Braithwaite. Sadly, Hyder Ali died of cancer on December 7, 1782. His son Tipu Sultan continued the war for 1 year. Both sides were tired. They signed the Treaty of Mangalore in March 1784. They agreed to return all territories taken from each other. Third Anglo-Mysore War. The conflict resumed due to Travancore. Travancore purchased Chalcot Tal and Cannanore from the Dutch. These were in Cochin state, a feudatory of Tipu. Tipu considered this a violation of his rights. In April 1790, he declared war on Travancore. The English sided with Travancore. In 1791, Lord Cornwallis took leadership. He marched to Bangalore and captured it. He then marched to Seringamapatnam. With the help of Marathas and the Nizam, the English attacked Seringamapatnam again. Tipu offered serious opposition but was outnumbered. He had to sign the Treaty of Seringamapatnam in 1792. The terms were harsh. Half of Mysore's territory was taken. The English took Baramahal, Dindigul and Malabar. The Marathas got regions near the Tungabhadra. The Nizam got areas near the Krishna River. Tipu also had to pay 3 crore rupees as war damage. His 2 sons were taken as hostages. Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, 1799. Tipu used the peace to rebuild. He got his sons released.
In 1796, the Hindu ruler died. Tipu refused to name a successor and declared himself Sultan. In 1798, Lord Wellesley became Governor-General. He was an imperialist. He feared Tipu's friendship with the French. He accused Tipu of plotting with the French, Arabia and Afghanistan. The war began on April 17, 1799. It ended on May 4, 1799 with the fall of Seringapatam. Tipu laid down his life fighting bravely. Arthur Wellesley participated in this war. The English confiscated Tipu's treasures. A boy from the old Wadiyar dynasty, Krishna Raja III, was made ruler. He accepted the subsidiary alliance. The English took Kannada, Wayanad and Coimbatore. Later in 1831, William Bentinck took control of Mysore. In 1881, Lord Ripon restored the kingdom.
Rise of the Marathas. Now we shift focus to the Marathas. As the Mughals declined, the Marathas rose. By the mid-18th century, they were in Lahore. They acted as kingmakers in the Mughal court. Bajirao I, the greatest Peshwa, created a confederacy. He assigned spheres of influence to prominent families. The Gaikwads of Baroda, the Bhonsle of Nagpur, the Holkars of Indore, the Sindhyas of Gwalior, and the Peshwa of Pune. Everything changed with the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. They were defeated by Ahmad Shah Abdali. Though they regrouped, the death of Peshwa Madhav Rao I in 1772 weakened them. The chiefs began to quarrel among themselves. This gave the English an entry point. First Anglo-Maratha War, 1775–82. Narayan Rao became the fifth Peshwa in 1772. His uncle, Raghunath Rao, had him assassinated. Raghunath Rao declared himself Peshwa. But Nana Phadnavis led 12 Maratha chiefs to oppose him. They supported the infant son of Narayan Rao, Savai Madhav Rao. Raghunath Rao sought English help. He signed the Treaty of Surat in 1775. He ceded Salsette and Bassein to the English. The British Calcutta Council rejected this treaty. They sent Colonel Upton to sign the Treaty of Purandar in 1776. This treaty annulled the Surat Treaty. But the Bombay government rejected the Calcutta decision. Conflict escalated. Mahatji Sindhya lured the English into the mountain passes near Talegaon. He trapped them and cut off supplies. The English surrendered and signed the Treaty of Vadgaon in 1779. Warren Hastings rejected this surrender. He sent a large force. They captured Ahmedabad, Bassein and Gwalior. Finally, peace was established. The Treaty of Salbai was signed in 1782. It guaranteed peace for 20 years. Salsette remained with the English. Territories conquered since Purandar were returned to Marathas. The English stopped supporting Raghunath Rao. Second Anglo-Maratha War, 1703–05. Bajirao II became Peshwa in 1795. He was the worthless son of Raghunath Rao. Nana Phadnavis died in 1800, removing the last wise leader. In 1801, the Peshwa murdered Vithuji, the brother of Jaswantrao Holkar. A furious Holkar attacked. He defeated the Peshwa and Sindhya at Hadapsar in 1802. Bajirao II fled to Bassein. He signed the infamous Treaty of Bassein on December 31, 1802. Under this treaty, the Peshwa accepted the subsidiary alliance. He agreed to station 6,000 British troops in his territory. He ceded territories yielding 26 lakh rupees. He surrendered Surat. He gave up claims on the Nizam. This treaty gave the English the key to India. Sindhya and Bhonsle tried to fight back, but Arthur Wellesley defeated them.
They were forced to sign separate treaties, the Treaty of Devgaon with Bhonsle, the Treaty of Surajian Jangaon with Sindhya, the Treaty of Rajpur Ghat with Holkar. The Marathas were reduced to vassalage. Third Anglo-Maratha War, 1817–19. Lord Hastings wanted to impose British paramountcy. The Charter Act of 1813 ended the company's trade monopoly. They needed new markets. Tension rose over the Pindaris. Pindaris were mercenaries who plundered territories. The English accused Marathas of sheltering them. The Maratha chiefs felt wounded by the Treaty of Bassein. They united one last time. The Peshwa attacked the British residency at Poona. Apa Sahib attacked Nagpur. Holkar prepared for war, but the Maratha leadership was weak and divided. The Peshwa was defeated at Khirki. Bhonsle was defeated at Sitabuldi. Holkar was defeated at Mahidpur. The war ended in 1818. The Peshwaship was abolished. Baji Rao II became a pensioner at Bithur. A small state of Satara was created for Pratap Singh, a descendant of Shivaji. Why the Marathas lost? Why did the mighty Marathas fall? First, inept leadership. Leaders like Baji Rao II were selfish. They were no match for English giants like Elphinstone and Arthur Wellesley. Second, defective state. There was no organic unity or spread of education. Third, loose political setup. The chiefs were hostile to one another. They lacked a cooperative spirit. Fourth, inferior military. They neglected artillery. They abandoned their traditional guerrilla tactics for Western methods they did not fully master. Fifth, unstable economy. They had no industries or foreign trade policy. Sixth, superior English diplomacy. The English had a better spy system. They knew how to isolate their enemies. Finally, progressive outlook. The English were driven by the Renaissance and science. The Indians were still steeped in medievalism. In the end, the British emerged as the supreme power in India.
Let us turn our attention to Sindh. In the early 19th century, the English showed interest in Sindh. They had enjoyed trade privileges since a Mughal Farman in 1630. In the 18th century, Sindh was ruled by Kalora chiefs. But in the 1770s, a Baluch tribe called Talpuras descended from the hills. They were excellent soldiers. In 1783, under Mir Fath Ali Khan, they established control. They exiled the Kalora prince. The kingdom was divided among Mir Fath's brothers. They were known as the Char Yar, or Four Friends. They called themselves the Amirs of Sindh. The British became anxious. They feared Napoleon was conspiring with Tipu Sultan. In 1807, Russia joined Napoleon in the Treaty of Tilsit. The British wanted a barrier. So Lord Minto sent delegations. Metcalfe to Lahore, Elphinstone to Kabul, Malcolm to Tehran, and Nicholas Smith to Sindh. In 1809, the Amirs signed a treaty of eternal friendship. They agreed to exclude the French from Sindh. In 1832, William Bentinck sent Colonel Pottinger. A new treaty was signed. Free passage was allowed for trade, but no warships were allowed on the Indus. The fall of Sindh. Lord Auckland became Governor-General in 1836. He feared a Russian invasion. He wanted to consolidate Sindh for his plans in Afghanistan. In 1838, the Amirs were forced to sign a new treaty. It turned Sindh into a British protectorate. Then came the Tripartite Treaty of 1838. The British made Emperor Shah Shuja give up his rights on Sindh, but they demanded the Amirs pay tribute arrears. In 1839, the Amirs accepted the subsidiary alliance. They had to pay 3 lakh rupees annually. They had to abolish tolls on the Indus. The first Anglo-Afghan war was fought on Sindh's soil. The Amirs did not like it. They were charged with treasonable activities. Lord Ellenborough sent Outram to negotiate a harsh treaty. He demanded important provinces. When the Amirs rose in revolt, Charles Napier started a war. In 1843, Sindh was capitulated. The Amirs were banished. Charles Napier became the first governor. Historians condemned this conquest. Elphinstone famously said, "Coming from Afghanistan, it put one in mind of a bully who had been knocked in the street and went home to beat his wife in revenge." Conquest of Punjab. Now we look at the mighty Punjab. After Guru Gobind Singh, the Sikhs were divided, but under Kapoor Singh Faizulpuria, they organized into the Dal Khalsa.
They consolidated into missals. These were military brotherhoods. There were 12 important missals. Ranjit Singh was born in 1780. He was the son of the leader of the Sukar Chakya missile. He followed a policy of blood and iron. In 1799, he became the governor of Lahore. In 1805, he acquired Amritsar. He united the political and religious capitals of Punjab. Ranjit Singh dealt cautiously with the English. In 1809, he signed the Treaty of Amritsar. He accepted the river Satluj as the boundary. He could not expand east, so he expanded west. He captured Multan, Kashmir, and Peshawar. He died in June 1839. With his death, the decline began. First Anglo-Sikh War, 1845–46. Chaos followed Ranjit Singh's death. His son Kharak Singh died suddenly. His grandson Nav Nihal Singh died accidentally. Eventually, Dalit Singh, a miner, became Maharaja. Rani Jindan became the regent. The army became too powerful and indisciplined. Tension grew on the border. The Sikh army crossed the river Satluj on December 11, 1845. This triggered the First Anglo-Sikh War. The Sikhs had 50,000 men. But they were betrayed by their leaders Lal Singh and Teja Singh. The Sikhs suffered 5 successive defeats at Mutki, Feroza Shah, Badalwal, Aliwal and Sobrown. Lahore fell in February 1846. They signed the Treaty of Lahore. The Sikhs had to pay over 1 crore rupees indemnity. They lost the Jalandhar Doab. Henry Lawrence became the British resident. Since they could not pay the full indemnity, they sold Kashmir to Gulab Singh. This caused a rebellion. So the Treaty of Bhairowal was signed in December 1846. Rani Jindan was removed as regent. A council of 8 Sikh Sardars was set up under the British resident. Second Anglo-Sikh War 1848-49. The Sikhs felt humiliated. Rani Jindan was treated inhumanely and sent to Banaras. In Multan, the governor Mulraj revolted. 2 English officers were murdered. Sher Singh was sent to suppress it, but he joined the revolt. Lord Dalhousie, a hardcore expansionist, seized the opportunity. He declared war. 3 battles were fought: the Battle of Ramnagar, the Battle of Chilianwala, and the Battle of Gujarat in February 1849. The Sikh army surrendered. Dalhousie annexed Punjab completely. The famous Kohinoor diamond was taken. The Lawrence brothers Henry and John were set up to govern Punjab. Interestingly, the Sikhs later fought loyally for the British in the revolt of 1857.
Extension of British paramountcy. How did the British consolidate this vast empire? They used 2 methods: war and diplomacy. Let us discuss 3 key administrative policies. First, the policy of ring fence. This was Warren Hastings' policy. It aimed at creating buffer zones. He defended the frontiers of his neighbors to protect his own territories. For example, the defense of Awadh constituted the defense of Bengal. Second, the subsidiary alliance. This was perfected by Lord Wellesley. Under the system, an Indian ruler had to accept British troops in his territory. He had to pay a subsidy for their maintenance. He had to accept a British resident. He could not employ other Europeans. He could not negotiate with other rulers without permission. In return, the British defended him. The first state to accept a form of this was Awadh in 1765. But under Wellesley, many joined. The Nizam of Hyderabad in 1798. Mysore in 1799, the Peshwa in 1801. The Holkars were the last Maratha confederation to join in 1818. Doctrine of lapse. Third, the doctrine of lapse. This is attributed to Lord Dalhousie. It stated that if a ruler died without a natural male heir, his state would not pass to an adopted son. Instead, it would lapse to the British. The adopted son could only inherit private property. Dalhousie used this aggressively. He annexed Satara in 1848. Jhansi and Nagpur in 1854. He also annexed Awadh in 1856, but on grounds of misgovernance. In 8 years, Dalhousie added 250,000 square miles to the British Empire.
Relations with neighbors: Nepal, Burma, Bhutan. The British also expanded beyond India's borders. Nepal. The Gorkhas controlled Nepal. Conflict arose over the border. Lord Hastings declared war. It ended with the Treaty of Sargoli in 1816. Nepal ceded Garhwal and Kumaon. They accepted a British resident. The British gained hill stations like Shimla and Nainital. Burma. There were 3 Anglo-Burmese wars. The first war, 1824-26, ended with the Treaty of Yandabo. Burma paid 1 crore rupees and ceded coastal provinces. The second war, 1852, was driven by Dalhousie's desire for timber. They annexed Pegu. The Third War, 1885, occurred under Lord Dufferin. King Thibaw was hostile and courted the French. Upper Burma was annexed. Burma eventually gained independence in 1948. Bhutan. In 1865, the British forced Bhutan to surrender the passes leading to Assam. This area became famous for tea gardens. Tibet and Afghanistan. Tibet. Lord Curzon feared Russian influence in Tibet. He sent the Young Husband Mission in 1904. They marched to Lhasa. The Treaty of Lhasa was signed. Tibet paid an indemnity. The British occupied the Chumbi Valley for a few years. Afghanistan. The British obsessed over the Russian bogey.
They wanted a scientific frontier. Lord Auckland followed a forward policy. He signed the tripartite treaty with the Sikhs and Shah Shuja. This led to the First Anglo-Afghan War, 1839-42. It was a disaster for the British. They lost 20,000 men and 1.5 crore rupees. Later, John Lawrence followed a policy of masterly inactivity. He avoided interference. Then came Lord Lytton with the policy of proud reserve. This led to the Second Anglo-Afghan War. The Treaty of Gandamak was signed in 1879. The British gained control over Afghan foreign policy. Northwest Frontier. Finally, the Northwest Frontier. The Durand Line was drawn in 1893 to separate Afghan and British territories. But tribal uprisings continued. Lord Curzon created the Northwest Frontier Province (NWFP) directly under the Government of India. He followed a policy of withdrawal and concentration. This concludes our detailed series on the expansion of British power. We have covered Bengal, Mysore, Marathas, Sindh, Punjab, and the borders. Keep your notes ready, and we will meet in the next lesson of Project Takheed, a modern history of India series. If you found this strategic overview helpful, please like, subscribe, and share this journey with your fellow aspirants. If you have any questions regarding what we have discussed today, drop a comment below. I will be personally addressing your doubts to ensure your conceptual clarity is absolute. Until next time, keep studying, stay curious, and I will see you in the next lesson.